What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 52 of Value Town. I'm ChanManV, and joining me today are three awesome arena players. I figured we'd do an arena episode because we haven't done one in a while. Why not do one after, just post BlizzCon, and now that an expansion's coming out, right? I want to welcome Kripp, Merps, and hopefully Ratsmith soon to the show. What's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
Good.
Uh,
Thanks for inviting us.
yeah, should be pretty fun. There's a lot to talk about.
Just a
We got
little bit.
Yeah.
yeah, we got some interesting things in terms of arena. It seems like League of Explorers is more of an arena expansion than it is a constructed one, so that should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I figured we'd kick off things by just talking a little bit about BlizzCon, and they made the big announcement there. Obviously, we were all expecting a new dungeon actually for the adventure mode, but they surprised us actually with League of Explorers, which is actually in World of Warcraft, but I don't
Not
know if it's not kind of pseudo in the lore. Right? I don't actually know the lore very well. Actually, Kripp, you might know better.
Okay, so there's like these little dwarf dudes, and among them is Braun, which we're seeing a card of.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
they just show up in random places and like, hey, what's up? We just explored this place. Welcome to our place now.
Right.
And that happened in Wrath of the Lich King. It happened in Classic, and I think it may have happened a third time in a later expansion.
And that's the extent of all the characters that are in.
Oh, I'm sure there's much more, but
Yeah, I think.
as far as like a typle World of Warcraft gamer, that's as much as most people know.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely
This is out of
surprising.
my league,
Yeah,
but
I mean, me too.
sure.
I mean, I played vanilla. I didn't play it much more than like I played vanilla for a couple of years, but I didn't play more than that.
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot of people aren't familiar with the lore behind League of Explorers. So it was kind of surprising they chose it, but at the same time, I think the theme is very fun, and kind of leads down the path of just what they've done with the adventures. Crip, did you get a chance to play it at BlizzCon?
No, I didn't have time to play it. I tried to play it on like the day before BlizzCon, and like as I was walking there, I had Blizzard employees running after me, and I'm not joking.
Okay, okay. I had a chance to play a little bit of it. I don't. I guess I don't. Probably shouldn't spoil too much for you guys, but I can tell you that the actual play mode. I mean, when you're actually playing, each of the I guess dungeons. They're not really dungeons in this one,
Mm.
so but each one of them is very very different. In fact, it's a lot more fun in my opinion than the previous two. So yeah, you guys should look forward to that. It actually launches in a few hours here, so should be a lot of fun. We'll have to talk about it, I think, once it comes out too. Also at BlizzCon, we had the World Championships, which Kripp, you had the pleasure of casting. And what'd you think of the whole event?
That was really good. I think we highlighted some very high level play. I think nobody was disappointed with the winner, and sometimes they are in tournament level play
Hmm.
because the RNG can sometimes dominate the more prepared player, let's say.
Hmm.
And also, I think we got to highlight that it's something we often talk about, but because Hearthstone has such a large random element, it's not really validated in many cases. But it has to do with tournament play is not ladder play. So if you play ladder, you're playing against like three decks the whole time. If you're playing tournament, you're playing against like many different varied versions of those decks on top of counter, along with like aligned setups to beat a particular deck. So
Hmm.
it's a very different game that I think more people should be open into looking at.
Yeah, I thought the semifinals were actually Merps. You were watching from home. Is
Yeah, I was watching it. I
Mhm.
thought overall it was just really good. As someone, I like to think of myself as a hardcore Hearthstone arena player, but constructed, I'm as casual as you can get.
Right.
I thought it was well run, and I thought it was just bottom line, it was entertaining. And
Hmm.
yeah, the semifinals between Osaka and Tides, that was crazy. I kind of partitioned an hour to watch that semifinals and it went like 3 hours, but I loved every second of it. It was just really cool, and it kind of opened my eyes to this constructed world, which I never play, but I thought the strategies were interesting. You could tell the players who were there belong there.
Yeah.
Next level plays, just like lots of thought put into it. and good personalities, kind of good storylines as well. I kind of like the infomercials that they ran about everyone in the
Hmm.
middle. So
Yeah.
well run, entertaining. It was good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely probably one of the smoothest Hearthstone productions I've seen uh, ever, actually. So kudos to the ESL team and Milk. I think I'm not sure a lot of people know that Milk's running a lot of this stuff behind the scenes these days.
Hmm.
Milkcast. But yeah, the semifinals. I think the semifinals between Tyson. So you allocated an hour. I allocated 2 hours because I had an interview with the dev team like in 2 hours. So I'm like, okay, I can at least catch this one right. And I didn't even catch the very very end of the game 5. So
Hmm.
that was kind of a bummer. But the game itself though is one of those few matches I think where the community's. It's been a while since we've seen a match where we can actually say that, oh my god, that this is definitely another level of play. It's been definitely a long time where we could actually just pinpoint that. And that game, that Freeze Mage game was definitely one of those games that we can see just how good they are, especially at playing Freeze Mage. Both of those guys are two of the best players at that deck. So that was definitely great to see. But overall, yeah, Osaka ended up winning. So world champion 2015.
Yep.
Hopefully he gets a huge boost. I mean, Osaka's been very good for a long time now. So really, really great to see him get to celebrate it.
Absolutely.
All right, so
Definitely.
done with the news now. Let's get into the cards. I think this is what everybody's been really waiting for, is having us discuss some of the cards. And I figured the best way to do it is to have each of these guys really list out the 5 most relevant cards that they think is in the set right now pertaining to Arena. So why don't we take a look at that real quick here? And
Can you? I don't know how you have it set up, but
yeah.
can we maybe go over the cards that we have in common to
Sure.
see if we have like different opinions on them first, and then we'll
Yeah,
like move.
I think that'd be a great
differences?
idea.
Yeah, definitely sounds good. Let me. Here we go. All right, so I got it up on stream right now.
All right, let's take a look at these.
Yeah. So the 2 that you have in common are the Fierce Monkey, and
I think that was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really
Yeah,
much to talk about that.
Nope.
and the Ethereal Conjurer.
There's probably a lot to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised. I was like, wow, that's cool. That you guys-
I'm glad Kripp picked this one as well. I think we would get some pushback by some people, but I think our thought process is very similar here. A lot of people bulk at the 3 health, and typically you don't want your 5 drop to have 3 health. But is Azure Drake a good card? Azure Drake is a really good card, and that's basically the same. No, not the same stat distribution, but like it's a pretty good stat distribution when you compare it to Azure Drake, and you're drawing a card, and you're drawing a better card. Mages have
Yeah.
they have good spells, and when you draw a card, especially if a card puts you a little bit behind, you want it to be a spell. Like spells basically are charge minions. Yeah, it's a weird way to think about it, but some spells are charge minions. So you want that instead of a minion that you just plop down and that are open to counterplay.
Yeah. I think the card is like ridiculously powerful if you're running like a tempo mage and you're ahead a little bit. Because if you're ahead, the 3 health really doesn't matter, because they would have used your removal to stop you from being ahead on an earlier creature than a 5 drop. So it's just like 5 drop threatening 6 damage, which is a lot for a 5 drop. So the stats actually don't even matter if you're playing a tempo mage or a mage in a tempo style that game. And as you talked about, discovering a spell, because it's only limited to the class, so you're getting a mage spell guaranteed. There are no neutral spells. That's better than a card draw. But one thing you kind of left out is like the mage spells that are considered bad aren't actually bad. They're just like far more situational. But
Yeah.
that aspect is actually really relevant here, because you don't have to pick that. But it sometimes will give you that option. Like sometimes, like if you play this on like turn 7, you might actually really need like an Arcane Missile or Arcane Explosion. And you don't want that card in your deck. But if you can get it off of this, it can actually win you the game in a lot of cases.
So that brings up a new mechanic that we see in League of Explorers, the Discover. What do you guys think of that mechanic?
I think it's like perfect for Arena.
Yeah,
I think it's so
too.
good.
I think so too.
We talk about good RNG versus bad RNG. This is good RNG. Like bad RNG is something like Ram Wrangler, where you don't have control over it, and then you kind of just, the swing is just huge either way. Discover, it's a way for you to introduce some RNG into the game, but it's not as expansive. It's limited within your class. And it's kind of a skillful way to implement RNG as well, because you still have to pick the card. So I think this is the direction that Blizzard should go in terms of RNG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also like Discover limits you on the limitation on the card. Like for instance, the Conjurer has the spell limitation. It has the class limitation, of course,
Yep.
but it doesn't have the rarity limitation. So it also allows you to kind of push for like legendary minions and epic minions, which often will win a game by themselves, which you otherwise would not have readily access to drafting a deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the cards that you do have differing, just differing here. So Mounted Raptor, or it's Mounted Raptor, right?
All right,
It's-
so
yeah, Mounted Raptor.
I'll
So-
like preach the case, and
Yeah.
then Merps can either
Yeah.
refute my claim
That sounds good.
Got it.
or be converted.
Converted. Actually,
Sounds
Mounted
good,
Raptor
man.
was on his list at one point, so this one's probably going to be easy for you,
Okay,
Kripp.
so I think the Raptor is pretty simple. You have to keep in mind the rarity scenario. We learned that class cards show up twice as often as neutral cards, and cards in the last expansion, at least for TGT, showed up 25% more. And they also mentioned that they might alter this percentage, so it might actually be more than 25% because it's a smaller expansion block. But it also diminishes the TGT set. So the TGT set loses its 25% bonus. So that's also kind of relevant. And with these things in mind, you're going to see a lot of the common cards in League of Explorers in your arena run. And I think Mounted Raptor is just premium 3-drop, and the consistency is going to be extremely high. And I feel like Druid's a class that you kind of expect to lose in the early game, and Mounted Raptor just kind of takes a lot of tempo. Sometimes a 3-2 won't be very good on turn 3, but in terms of a tempo play, it's a very good one, because even if you get a 1 health, 1-drop, you're taking 2 mana from your opponent, and if you're trading for a 2-drop, you still net 1 mana on that. And it's a beast, which increases the consistency of your beast synergistic cards. And that's another aspect that's really important. You're going to have a high frequency access to a beast, and suddenly your beast synergistic cards are much better than they were before.
Yeah, I think your analysis is spot on. I don't think Raptor is a bad card, and like ChanMan said, that was like really close on my list as well. Yeah, I think Harvest Golem is a good comparison, and also Druids. Every expansion for Druids, I mean this one not so much, but like TGT was ridiculous in giving them early game, right? Like they've been getting good early game every single expansion, and back in Classic they were this slow plodding like the Ironbark Protector class, and now they have like Living Roots, Darnassus, Druid of the Saber, all these good low drops as well, and this just adds to it, which added beast synergies as well is good. I just didn't put it on the list because I don't think it advances Druids in a way that is, that advances it more than other cards advance other classes. I do think it's very good though.
Well, I want to dispute that a little bit. I mean, every single card you just mentioned was in TGT, which you're going to see that occurrence bonus removed.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
all those cards that
That's
help
right.
Druid so much are no longer going to help Druid as much. But because they have this, it kind of, stabilizes that situation.
Sure, yeah. No, I definitely agree with that, but I think right now they actually have an overabundance of good low drops that diminishing, like taking away the 25% won't hurt them that much, because on top of those you have Anodized Robocub, right? And then you have, they have lots of good, consistent, even more importantly, synergistic small drops. Like the ones I've listed are either beasts or it's a mech, which is awesome. It's just really good in the arena to get that extra synergy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Merps, let's talk about the card that you did replace, actually Mounted Raptor with, which was Pit Snake, rogue card. And for those of you listening to it, I should probably talk about it. So it's a 1-drop, 2/1 beast, destroy any minion damaged by this minion.
Yeah, so I ultimately picked Pit Snake. I just think it's tough when you say top 5 in terms of most relevant. I think because Rogue is, to me, and Kripp, you can dispute this, I think Rogue is on top of the arena right now. I think it's the #1 class. And Pit Snake is just, it puts so much pressure and it helps Rogue down this path that they love to walk down, which is tempo, different sorts of pressure and swing turns. And this also, puts pressure in terms of if they're not a ping class, it gets a little bit dicey if the rogue has the board. And rogue has many ways to get the board initiative. And if they're a ping class, then lots of times you don't mind them pinging with 2 mana just on your 1 drop that you can probably activate a combo off of as well. So you get that mana advantage, you put on the pressure, and a lot of times this dinky little 1 mana card can have a huge effect on the game. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. I just think the case, like, okay, you look at that card and you look at like Lepronome. If it's a back and forth game, it's literally worse than Lepronome. It's really only good when you're like crushing your opponent, so he can't deal with this and he can't play like his 5-drop on turn 5 to try to come back. Right? That's when it's really good. And I feel like if you're in that case, you're probably just gonna win the game as a rogue anyway. So I think it's a good card, but I don't think it really advances rogue much more than its current position.
Yeah, and I think this is just it helps rogue with what they're good at. I do agree it doesn't exactly advance, and this is why I was like kind of tossing and turning between the Raptor and this one. For me, I think it's pretty close in terms of my top 5 because I don't think it gives them anything that they don't already have. It helps them walk down this path, and it helps them compensate for the lack of the 25% offering rate. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think it actually didn't make my top 10 list, but it's maybe 11.
I think these are really close. Like, I was looking at some cards. I was like, yeah, I mean, if you want to say like number 3 or number 4 on my list versus even like number 12, I'm like,
pretty similar still. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
All right, let's talk Raven Idol. So this is a one. I guess it's a spell, right? So it's a 1 mana spell or item, whatever. Choose one, discover a minion, or discover a spell. So multiple layers of decisions here.
I'll straight up just say it. I think this is probably the best card for Arena out of the whole set.
Wow. All right.
Define best.
That's bold.
It'll win you the most games out of all these cards, I think. Okay, so if you're playing Druid, you have this in your opening hand, and you don't get a 2-drop. There's a very good chance you get a 2-drop in terms of creatures. Okay, so it helps you fix the curve in a way that doesn't actually punish your tempo, which is really important because there's just not that many 1-drops in Arena. If you need to finish off your opponent, if you look at the Druid spells, almost all of them do damage or draw cards, so you could draw into damage. That's the idea. So if you're in that situation where it's like, oh man, I'm 4 off lethal, you just use this card, and there's extremely good chance that you'll get that damage that you need. And this is where I talked about how Discover is really powerful because it crosses the rarity boundary. But like you have to think about it. Like, it's not exactly like Unstable Portal, because Unstable Portal you get like the discount back. But I feel like Druid is pretty good at like stabilizing a bit with its high power early minions and very strong taunts in the late game, where the mana difference isn't as important as it is to actually get a very heavy card. So if you Unstable Portal 3 times, you're gonna get like a ridiculous card in terms of a minion. You're gonna get like, I don't know, you might not get Sylvanas, but you'll get like a Boulder Fist. So if you're paying 1 more mana for minion like that, it usually doesn't matter. Which means that you basically substitute a Boulder Fist Ogre for a Raven Idol. So it curves out your deck so hard and gives you like extreme flexibility. I think what it does is just insane. I think because of this card, Druid's probably the best class out of this expansion.
Wow.
Right.
You mean resulting from the expansion, or you mean from the standpoint of improvement from this expansion?
I think both.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Merps?
Yeah, I think all right. In terms of like selling me on Raven Idol, I think you've sold me a little bit on it. I think it's definitely good. And an interesting point about Raven Idol is it's more similar to tracking than discover mechanic.
Yeah.
Because if you think about tracking, and part of the reason why like tracking is good is because you have 2 filters, right? Your first filter is actually during the draft, because when you pick the cards from tracking, you're picking 3 cards out of the 3 cards that you have already picked. So, while there's no like curve consideration in tracking, you have that quality filter. Discover doesn't have that initial quality filter. It's almost like tracking, but a separate kind of filter. You're filtering either a minion or a spell. So by having a double filter, you do get you tend to get the more appropriate card. You tend to get the better card for the situation. So
Yeah.
that is really good. The reason I didn't put it on my list was just because it offers something that druids really don't need once again, which is flexibility. Like druids have always been very flexible. Their weaknesses are sort of, they're not the fastest class, and it changes a little bit now with mulch, but and recycle, but they never had hard removal, so they had to
Mhm.
play a very honest style of play. They can't like cheat by using like a hex, something like that. And this doesn't really help them with that. It just makes them even more flexible, which is good. But I thought kind of the impact was not as high. You definitely sold me a little bit on it.
I
I like that.
I think the discover mechanic actually weeds out more common, rare, and epic cards than it does legendaries, because each class has 3 legendaries, but there's
Yeah.
like 60 neutral legendaries. So if you use this for minion, I think like 1 in 8 cards are going to be legendaries, and if you roll that 3 times, that's like half the time you use this, you're going to get a legendary minion, right? Like that's
Yeah.
insane for arena, even if you have
That
to
is.
pay 1 more mana. Like
Yeah.
Fair
a
enough.
legendary is usually over budgeted, so like the 1 more mana doesn't even matter a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's good. And once again, it goes back to kind of like you have to get the legendary. The legendary has to be good, but the most important factor is you have to make it to the legendary because the small legendaries basically are all pretty terrible. It's
There's
really
not that
like
many of them though. There's really not that many.
there's not that many,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
very few.
But it's usually like the one legendaries that are good are usually like the heavy hitters, your Dr. Booms, your Kel'Thazads, your Rags, and all that stuff. So you still have to make it to that turn. And a lot of times in the arena, and I think you said this before, you carve out a small advantage in the early game, and then that advantage just multiplies every turn. And then
Yep.
even when you get to play your Ragnaros, the game's already over by that point.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Merps. Your next card on the list is a Paladin card, Keeper of the Oldemon. It's a 4-drop, 3/4 body, battle cry, set a minion's attack and health to 3. So it really puts them in range of just being able to kill him with the Keeper, right?
I think this is a really powerful card because it gives paladins something that they couldn't do before, which is basically it's a big removal. It's not a pure removal, but it equalizes. So this thing is over costed by 1, right? It's over costed by 1, but the flexibility is huge. So on turn 6, you could, if you got no other play, you just hero power, do this. It's a 3/4 and a 3/3 for 6 mana. That's pretty good. And if you're behind on the board, which is a scenario where paladins sort of really struggle, like if they just drop a Boulder Fist Ogre and you're like, well, I have all these buffs in my hands. I need to just grab a small board advantage and then suddenly I can buff. This is what gets you back. So it's good when you're ahead, it's good when you're behind, and it offers this pseudo outdoor peacekeeper effect. It's not as good as an outdoor peacekeeper, but it offers a sort of outdoor peacekeeper effect as a common card, which I think is really good for paladins.
Okay. Yeah, I think I overlooked this card a little bit. It is really good in all those cases. I think the one thing that really held me back is it's a card that can actually be really bad. Like it's not always good if you're behind. It's good if you're behind in like the mid to late game. But if you're behind and this is your only 4-drop and you're facing like scrubs everywhere, sucks to play this, right? So it's a card that isn't really that great to play on turn 4. But one thing that we've seen throughout the expansion is there's all these cards that are like 1, 2, 3, 4 mana that actually substitute for like 6 and 7 drops. They
Yeah.
kind of take them on, and this has that quality. So I think I did overlook it a little bit. It's just I think you have to play it that way. Like if you're curving out your deck with this in mind as a 4-drop, you're probably curving too slow.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of you can make sort of a similar argument with like Murloc Knight, right? It's a 4 that's not actually a 4 unless you have a clear board on turn 4, you drop it, and then you kind of hope and cross your fingers that they don't have 4 damage. So it's similar to that. It has that Murloc Knight Cavalier Raider sort of understated, but if it just survives for a turn, it's good. It has that situationalness to it. But I think overall the effect is just really powerful.
Yep.
Yep, agreed. Okay, Kripp. Priest card, 2-drop, 1/2, Museum Curator. Battlecry, discover a Death Rattle card.
All right, I'll just say it again. When I first saw this card, I thought it was a joke. Thought like 2 mana 1/2. Like, what is this? You know, this is not the game we're playing these days. At least it should have been a 2/1. Well, it would have been much better as a 2/1. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because it would take on a high number of 2-drops at least. So it makes it so if you play this card on turn 2, it's actually kind of crappy. But it's another card that you actually have to research the Death Rattle list. And after I originally reviewed this card badly, as I mentioned in my first card review, one of the comments on Reddit was like, you should just look at the Death Rattles to see it. This card's really not that bad at all. So he posted a list of them, and they're like, wow, these cards are absolutely crazy. Most of the Death Rattle minions are like insane in the early game or catch you up. You have this guy, if you play him on turn 2, you're going to be in a losing situation. But like almost all the Death Rattle cards in the early game are okay in a losing situation. That's kind of what they're good at. So it's okay as a desperate play on turn 2, more so than it seems. That's my point. But then when you like scroll up, like half the cards on that list are legendary. Like the cards are insane.
Yeah.
There's like Sylvanas, a piloted Sky Golem. There's Major Domo, which is pretty bad.
Cairn.
There's Cairn. All the high power Death Rattle cards, even the mid power Death Rattle cards, are just crazy. So again, I think this is a card that substitutes for like a 6-drop, but because Priest is so terrible if you miss your early game drops, that it kind of bridges the gap. It's just like Murloc Knight, as we talked about, with even keeping it Wildermon, which is it's a heavy drop in an early game body, and I think that really helps Priest stay consistent. So I think that's why it's very important for the class.
No, that's really good. So I didn't go through the list of Death Rattles, although thinking about it now, just going through in my head, yeah, I can see how a lot of them are really good. One of the reasons I dismissed this card is not so much the problem with this card itself, it's the main problem with the Priest class and why, so if you go all the way back to Classic, Paladin was still pretty good, but Paladins and Priests both had this problem where if they got on the board, they were really good, they were dominant, but they both had this issue where neither one of them had good tools to get on the board. And, Paladins had great turn 4 plays, but it had really, crummy early plays. So, and then you see the kind of separation throughout all these expansions. Paladin has gotten shielded minibots, musters, and that allows them to not just take advantage of having the board, but get the board, just really stick onto the board. Priests have never had that. This expansion doesn't help it at all. And Kripp, you use kind of the term desperation play on 2, and then you can grab something of value, of pretty good value, but Priests still suffer from the same problem. And I think it's a problem that you really see in this expansion, Entomb, good card on paper, right, in a vacuum, but that doesn't help the Priest at all. They need a muster,
It's still like a mind control, I feel, in Tomb.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
But I think this does help that a little bit. If you're making your draft, you're playing Priest, you need 3 Boulder Fists in your deck. You just play this instead of it. It just increases the consistency of your deck. It doesn't do it very well, but it's still you would rather have this than a Boulder Fist.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think
definitely.
it's pretty good on that note.
All right, Merps, your last one, 7-drop, 7/7 body, Obsidian Destroyer. At the end of the turn, summon a 1/1 Scarab with Taunt.
All right,
It's
so
beautiful.
To be perfectly transparent and honest, I don't think it should have made the top 5 in terms of impact. But I did want to talk about this card, in terms of impact. And look, if you look at all the other cards, there's a reason that, with the exception of Ethereal Conjurer, and that's, we explained why we put that on there. There's a reason that impact-wise, 1, 2, 3 drops are going to have more impact than a 7-drop, even though it is, and I think Kripp will even admit that it's pretty good, right? It's at least pretty good.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about it just in terms of I think this does help Warrior in quite a few ways. So number one, just power creep versus War Golem, right? This is just much better. And War Golem is it's an average card, average below average card in the arena.
What about Cabal Shadow Priest? Not power creep.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks. Or MC Tech. You played this right into MC Tech, right? Your favorite card of all time.
Yep.
But I think that getting the 1/1 with taunt is just really good because number one, if it that 1/1 provides sort of a pseudo ping for a non-ping class if it survives. If it doesn't survive, they either have to run something into it, which kind of changes the board state, or they have to hero power it down, in which case you're essentially getting a 5 mana 7/7, which is ridiculous. And more so, just talking about the warrior, this is a good step, but Fierce Monkey, I don't think there'll be any disagreement. Like Fierce Monkey will determine games more often than Obsidian Destroyer.
Yeah.
Just because of the mana cost. But I think this is good, and it gives Warriors kind of this late game option to go with this early game. And we can also talk about the new weapon they got. I forgot exactly what it was, the 1 mana 2/3 weapon. But
the curse, yeah, the curse.
yeah, like if you look at all these together, it's going in a good step. I don't think the curse blade is a good card by any
Nobody
means.
does. You're safe.
No. Yeah.
But like, look, it'll get used in the arena, right? Basically, a lot of decent
Maybe.
to bad cards will get used in the arena. But I think this is a decent step, and that's why I thought it deserves a mention because you could see them making an attempt, and this will definitely get played. And do I think Warriors like got a lot better? No. Do I even think that they are not like the worst class? I still think they're the worst class, but hey, we're heading somewhere. So there you go.
I actually
Really?
think depending on how much they skew the occurrency bonuses, like if they make I don't know, Explorer cards 50% more likely rather than 25%. I think Warriors would actually be like a class. It would be a debate whether they're not maybe the worst class.
Sure. Yeah. I could get behind that. I could get behind that. Yeah.
As far as the card, I think one aspect that it does very well. I mean, everything you said is totally right. I think it's above the power level of most big minions, so it's really good that Warrior gets it because if Warrior wants, it can. You can usually push to a late game strategy as Warrior
Yeah.
at a costly amount of hero powers and tempo, but you can usually do that. So it's okay. It's just Warrior doesn't have too many comeback mechanics at that stage in the game. So even if you play as, you'd still probably lose. But one thing that Warriors do have often going into like turn 5, 6, maybe 7, you'd have a weapon up. That's usually when you play one because like all weapons are playable on like 5 or 6. And not in terms of mana cost alone, but in terms of like an opening in your mana.
Yeah.
I feel it's like a card that in a specific board case would allow you to actually push for a face condition. Because like even though like yeah it's like a 1/1 taunt, it can be pinged or whatever, but if your opponent doesn't have a ping, it might just stop like his 7/7 from attacking you, which means you get 7 face damage, right?
Yeah.
So it's a card that has this like a little bit extra potential to allow you to close out the game, which is something Warriors actually really do need.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think that in terms of winning strategies in the arena, when you play Warrior, you have to play it, I think, a bit more aggressively than a lot of people might like. And it's different because in Constructed, you see Warriors like just armor, 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 and that is, that leads to a winning strategy. And in the arena, you actually have to play, tempo really aggressive because if you look at every single turn, your lack of a ping, the kind of the fact that your cards are not as good, the fact that your hero power just is trash, that will really show in the span of 15 turns, in the span of 20 turns. So you really have to push it a little bit, end the game by like turn 8 or turn 9. And I agree. That's definitely like anything that allows you to do that, which to me feels kind of like the winning strategy with Warrior these days. Like that's good. It's helpful.
All right, well,
All right.
Ratsman's not here with his 5, but I figured we still got some time. So why don't we talk about some of the cards that were really close to making the list? Maybe another 2 or 3 that you guys have. Are they all common cards for you guys? I mean, common
Yes,
cards are all.
in my top 10, I have no rare cards.
Yeah. We could kind of take a small tangent. I think if tossing out rarity, I think another cool card, and I think one that could be pretty powerful is the other Raptor, the Unearthed Raptor. The 3 mana, 3/4 for Rogue. That is, you basically get to copy Death Rattle effect. like talking about cards with upside, any card with upside and no downside, that's amazing. This is a
Yeah,
spider tank. You don't have the mech synergy, but how often are you going to pull off mech synergies in the arena? And you have this crazy
it's
good,
nice.
yeah. You have this crazy good upside. If you do have a death rattle, it's pretty good. Turn 2 Haunted Creeper, turn 3 this, not
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Very true.
Um, just to name a few cards that I thought were just pretty good. I thought Forgotten Torch was pretty good just because removal is so premium in Arena. Um,
Yep.
I think you mostly just play it 3 mana for 3 damage and never draw the Fireball. I think that's what you can expect out of the card. But removal is so premium that that is still pretty good.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And the fact that it's 3 mana for 3 damage, which let's face it, kind of stinks, um, is more okay for a mage. Like mage is one of those classes that can slow the game down a little bit, play for value, just remove, and then once you do draw the Roaring Torch, it's a better Fireball, and Fireball is a top card in the arena.
Mhm.
So you just find a turn in which you need that initiative. You need the Wolf Rider basically.
Hmm.
You play your Wolf Rider, and then you put like a super premium card into your deck. And as the mage, you can feel confident that with a lot of drafts, you can make it there, wherever that card is in your deck.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have another one?
Yeah. So I was also looking at this card when we went through this card. Last week. I know a lot of people disagreed. I want your take on it. What do you think of Ancient Shade? It's another rare card. 4 mana, seven
Okay.
four. You shuffle
Um,
Ancient Curse.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's actually pretty good for constructed. I think in arena, because it's a
Mhm.
rare and because it doesn't do anything too spectacular, um, I think it doesn't have a consistent enough spot in any given deck. Very few decks actually push for face damage, and it's still just 4 health. So if you're not winning, it just gets killed by something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not too crazy about it for arena. I think I'm more crazy about it for constructed, but I'm still not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah. So my initial thought looking at this was just let's compare it to the Lost Tall Strider, right? Which is pretty average card in the arena. And then the big question becomes, so this obviously has a bad effect. At any moment, you could take 7 damage to your face, which is not good. Games are determined sometimes by 1 or 2 damage, so 7 damage is a lot. But my initial reaction was, well, it's turn 4. When is the 7 attack actually going to matter? But we've actually had an influx of 2/6s, like quite a few 2/6s, and just these annoying. You're going to see Maiden of the Lakes. You're going to see Frigid Snowbolts. Yeah, sometimes you'll see the turtle as well, but it actually can matter. And the fact that I'm also assuming that the Ancient Curse, when you draw it, you're going to draw another card. Like it would
Yeah.
be terrible if, yeah, yeah. That would be a terrible condition. Just take 7 damage, you don't draw a card. But yeah, I think this is actually going to be a decent card, and we had quite a lot of pushback. But I think it's kind of a toss up for me. You're never going to see these side to
Mm.
side because one is rare and one is common. But if I saw a Lost Toss Rider with this, I'm like, I'm not sure. It depends on the deck.
Well, it's a rare, so you're not going to see that.
yeah.
Yep.
True.
But my counter argument is that you're right. Like people are playing 2/6s and stuff like that. But the reason they're playing 2/6s is because people are playing high attack, high impact early game drops, and this would just die to those.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's kind of cyclical, right? Like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens? You see, you react, and then there's going to be the counter play, the counter draft to that. So I think that's pretty interesting. And then look, there's also some cards that I see it, and from an arena perspective, I'm just like, this is just trolled and waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of those cards.
You play
There's
like 3 of these, and then you
yeah.
die when you have lethal on the board.
Yeah, definitely. Like anything can happen.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
basically all these Murloc cards, and whoever gets the golden monkey,
But those
well,
aren't as viable
Nobody's
in
getting the
arena.
gold monkey in arena, dude.
That's not gonna happen. I mean, even anything can happen isn't gonna happen that much in arena, right? Like just a
Yeah.
boatload of Murlocs.
But where are you on the card now? Are you still? It's like maybe okay. Are you still there?
Huh?
An,
Like what?
an ancient shade. I'm still thinking it's terrible. I think it's pretty
I
terrible.
don't think it's terrible, and that's the reason I brought it up. I wanted your
Mhm.
opinion on it because I don't think it's. I think my opinion is probably higher than what most people would have it as, and
Okay.
I could definitely be wrong, you know. And like you said, it for the current meta, I think it's okay, but
Okay.
who knows where it'll go? Yeah.
So
All right.
what do you guys think of Dark Peddler? Because we didn't talk about any Warlock cards here.
There's a reason to that. They're mostly not good. I think Dark Peddler is horrible for constructed because it doesn't do
Hmm.
enough. Constructed is more about tempo.
Sure.
But in arena, you can kind of slide on tempo a little bit. Dark Peddler is the 2 mana 2/2 that discovers a 1 cost card.
Yes, that's right.
Um, so 1 cost cards include all the 1 drop creatures, and some of those are actually pretty good, especially if you have a range of 3. You can usually pick a pretty decent one, like a Flame Imp, a Zombie Chow. Maybe if you're not playing against the pink class, just a 2/1 is pretty decent. So it's not bad. Ultimately, I kind of rank this on a similar power level to Razorfin Hunter, which is not a terrible card, but
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like a 2 drop or a 3 drop. Every now and then you're gonna get like Soulfire and be really happy. Maybe Immortal Coil and be pretty happy.
Hmm.
Um, but I just don't think it's high enough impact. I think it's basically on the power level of most cards. So I don't think it really advances Warlock in any way.
Yeah, I think Razor Van Hunter is a pretty good comparison. Warlocks do have a few good one mana spells. Like if you get a Mortal Coil, that's really good. Mortal Coil is just a huge winning card in the arena. Flame Imp, obviously, you know, most of the time you're pretty happy to see that. And everything else, yeah, most of the time you're just gonna get the Razor Van Hunter, but you get the flexibility of you can either play it that turn or you can just, you know, if you only have 2 mana to squeeze out, right? So it has the additional flexibility because the Razor Fan Hunter is a clunkier 3 mana, and
Yeah.
sometimes you can't really fit that in. So I think it's decent. You know, I think it's kind of like average, maybe like a little bit above average for arena card, and it's just it also fits into the way the Warlock plays as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely not premium. And look, I know nothing about constructed, so I'll just agree that there's no place for it in constructed.
Nah, I don't think so. I'll throw one on my list that I actually thought was pretty good that I even thought about in the top 5. But we talked about the cards that had high impact. There's also no surprise that they're all class based because that doubles the occurrence.
Yes.
So a neutral
Yeah.
card would have to be spectacular to make that list. And none of the neutral cards are spectacular, but I thought if this was a class card, it may have made one of the lists. So it's just something to think about, and it's an interesting dynamic. It is Tomb Spider. It's the 4 mana 3/3 that discovers a beast.
Oh yeah.
And what's really interesting is that particularly hunters and to a lesser degree druids have some pretty gnarly beasts that you can discover.
Yeah.
I also feel the card in general is on a similar level to Gnomish Engineer or Gnomish Inventor, which is actually pretty good. Gnomish Inventor is not a bad card. On turn 4, I think you'd want a 3/3 over a 2/4 a lot of the time. But it's mostly that Tomb Spider does 2 things. You have the desperate turn 4 play. You have like the 10 mana play. You slam down Tomb Spider and try to curve out as best as possible with a beast from it. But if you're playing like Hunter, you know, there's really still not that many beasts. You know, you got Highmane, you got Gazrilla, you got King Crush, you got Maexna, you got the Beast. You know, the amount of like
That's right.
high impact cards that you get from this, especially for Hunter, is like totally insane.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something that Hunter actually needs. They need to like curve out in the late game to like actually be able to sustain themselves a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think this would be a a very impactful card if we were just saying like what are some really good cards for druids or hunters. But yeah, I think the reason you're correct. The reason it didn't make our list was just because if you look at classes that are going to play this card that are outside of druid and hunter, beasts are not that good. Like neutral beasts are not that good, and those two classes have synergies with beasts.
Yeah.
Neutral beasts synerging with I don't I don't know if there's synergies with Neutral Beast. I can't really think of one right now, but even if there are, it's not strong. It's just not strong at all. So the drop off is huge if you're like using it as a druid and hunter versus like anyone else. So yeah,
Yeah.
So Reno Jackson comes up on one of your choices. You picking him?
never,
No.
Okay.
never. It would have to be
I don't
like
know about never.
I mean,
Like,
Arena's going to have
there
the most
is a
likely
scenario-
chance.
generally, no.
Arena will have the best chance of having just singletons, right? A deck full of singletons.
Yeah, but if you play Control Warrior, that's just a card you play when you're in fatigue, right?
Yeah.
It's going to see more constructed play than it's going to see Arena for sure.
Yeah.
Which seems weird because most people most people say what you just said, right? In the arena, like, oh, it's just kind of a hodgepodge of cards. You're just going to get one-ofs most of the time. But in the arena, this card works well if the rest of your deck revolves around this card, right? In constructed, it's kind of like you take a few cards or you take this one idea and you mold all the rest of the cards around either this idea or these few cards. In the arena, like, do you mold things around Reno Jackson? It's such a like the body is terrible. You have to assume that you're pretty much behind to get value out of it, and that's a terrible assumption. It's like, well, I'm going to be losing anyways. Might as well just pick Reno Jackson.
Well, that's the other thing. It often gaining even like 27 health against the mage, you still lose
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
the same way.
Yeah.
Like the issue is that in arena you don't have burst combos and you don't have like combo win conditions. So it's just more important to tempo out and grind your opponent's health down.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we haven't talked about this yet, but Kripp, I'd like to know. So, who do you think are the overall winners and
Yeah.
losers?
I was going to bring that up too.
The winners of what?
Winners and losers of basically this adventure mode, like with the new cards, like which classes are the winners, which classes are the losers.
I think actually Paladin's the loser because they got so much in TGT and that has a rarity bonus and that's going away. And I don't think they're getting really that much out of this set. Some of the other classes literally just get nothing, so there's a lot of losers, I guess. But I think that
Yeah.
affects the Paladin the most out of all the classes. The fact that the TGT rarity bonus is likely going away. I think the big winner is Druid, and Warrior. But Warrior still has a long way to go. I think Mage got some pretty nice cards, and it's already near the top. So I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to say Druid is big winner, Paladin is loser.
All right, Merps.
Totally disagree on Paladin.
Okay.
I know what you mean. I think if you look at it in terms of like basically cutting down the odds of them getting Murloc Knight and Seal Champions, which just feel unfair sometimes, right? Like these are just ridiculously good cards. That will hurt them. But I think that because this expansion it doesn't advance, like, there's no like extreme power cards in this expansion. The fact that Paladins get like a pretty good card, and I think Keeper is a top tier pick. Like for me, Keeper of Ultiman is a top tier pick. So just getting a top tier pick and riding on the kind of power that you already had, I think that's pretty good. I don't think they're the winner by far, of this expansion, but I definitely don't think they're the loser. The loser, I would say, is Priest, just because of the reasons I talked about. Like, I would have loved for them to get an actual early gameplay, and they didn't get anything. Like they basically got a buffed up novice engineer, and it's a great novice
It's like
engineer.
half a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's half a thing, but it's something you can play in the early game. But like you play a 1/2 on turn 2, you've lost the board guaranteed against everything, right?
No, it's
So-
I think it's mostly a counter against the one drop,
yeah.
right? It's not nothing.
2-1.
It's
just
not nothing.
usually
No.
bad. It's
You
usually
have some-
bad.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually bad. And then they got things like they got Entomb, and they have what was that AOE that
It's the excavated evil.
Pretty forgettable.
yeah
and then you give that card to your opponent.
yeah. I mean,
That's pretty terrible.
with excavated evil, at least, all right. Like Kripp, how many times have you played around Holy Nova and left like your entire board at 3 health? Like we've all done that before, and I guess this you can punish that. But excavated evil, I mean, it's another slow card, right? It's a more expensive Hellfire, and Hellfire even a lot of times is just too slow.
Well,
So
I
I
think
think,
like
yeah,
the good part of the card is if you're playing an aggro deck and they actually draw it, they're gonna lose.
yeah, yeah,
But that aspect is gone in Arena. There almost are no aggro decks at all
Yeah.
in Arena. So yeah,
yeah.
there is no advantage to this card at all.
Yeah, so I think that's why I think the priests kind of lost overall. Like they got heavier and they got more value, and they don't need anything that gives them more value. Like if they make it to the late game, their hero power is amazing. They have so many ridiculously good cards that synergize with them having the board, that they're not losing the late game. Mind Control, Temple Enforcer, and I just wanted them to get one early game card that mattered, and they didn't get it. So that's why I think they're the losers.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in
Okay.
terms of a comparison, just to compare your loser and my loser, I think Paladin is in a worse off position than in TGT. I think Priest is a slightly better position than in TGT. So I mean, like when I say Paladin's a loser, I'm not saying Paladin's the worst class in Arena. It's probably like the third
Yeah,
or
yeah,
best
It's
after this.
relative, yeah.
But
Just
like
yeah,
the amount of drop compared to other classes, I think, I kind of stand behind my decision. And I kind of disagree a little bit. I think Priests, even though they got more late game, it's still pretty good late game. Like Entomb is on the same power level as
it
Six
is.
Drops. It's on the same power level as Mind Control, actually. And Museum Curator helps that a little bit. So, I mean, you basically got more consistent late game, which kind of means that if you adjust your drafting to just almost exclusively early game, maybe that in itself actually makes the Priest class better.
Yeah, and we'll have to see, right? This is us talking from, talking from our armchairs, and
Yeah.
I
we'll see
I
soon.
tend to get some things right in these predictions and get a lot of things wrong as well, and that's kind of the excitement. Like if you know what's going to happen, then why are you freaking playing this game in the first place? But no, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think that what we said at the very beginning is correct. This is very arena centric, and you can take that two ways. You can number one say that it's just not a very good, it's just not a very good expansion, because it's not very constructed relevant. But I thought they put in a lot of interesting cards as well.
Hmm.
They a lot of these kind of not only just introduce a new mechanic, but kind of make you think about the class a little bit differently, give a class a different tool, or they advance, they out of all the kind of boundaries that this class has, it pushes them in a little bit different direction, just a tiny bit, which I think is really appropriate. That's what every expansion should do.
Yeah, and the definitely Discover mechanic is way better than what we saw with Inspire and Joust just last expansion, right? So I think they've done a really good job actually with such a small set of cards. I think we're gonna see
Yeah.
some changes, and that's all we've been really really wanting.
There's
Overall,
also
oh, go ahead.
there's
Go
also
ahead,
the
Greg.
unknown factor of how they're going to adjust the frequency, because that also plays a really big
That's
role.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're operating under the assumption that they're just going to transfer the 25% rate to the new expansion. And if they're not, if it's anything other than that, like our analysis today, like Kripp's picks, my picks, and what we've been saying, it's going to be off. And it
Yeah.
could be off by a decent amount because that's huge. That's significant. Not only are we assuming that they're offering these at a higher rate, like, this is the reason why you say Paladins are the losers, right? Because we're assuming they're not going to have all these Murloc Knights and Seal Champions, which
Yeah,
are just two of the best, not even best class cards, two of the best arena cards, period. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I am curious to hear your winner, Merps. I mean, I kind of vouched for Druid pretty
Yeah.
big. I think one aspect I didn't even talk about is just the fact that there is a disproportionately high number of beasts introduced in this expansion. So it
Yeah.
enables some of the more mediocre Druid cards to have an increase in power level, on top of them receiving what I think are some of the best cards in the set.
Yeah, I think winners, Druid is pretty close to the top, just in terms of kind of this consistency, the power that they also get. I would actually put the overall winner, and not really because of card quality, but just kind of because of their current strength and the fact that I don't think they're really going to slip. I would put Rogue as the overall winner because I think not slipping in this expansion is winning almost.
Yeah.
But I think they got cards that really help them play the style that they want to play. You know, I think in some expansions, Blizzard either helps out a class, like, you know, gives them good cards, but good cards that don't really fit the play style. I think that Rogue got some pretty good cards, maybe not the top cards, but they got some pretty good cards that help them in the manner that they want to play, which is tempo, you know, with the Pit Snake, the rare card with the Raptor. That's just good value. You know, you're never really disappointed with a Spider Tank. And yeah, I just think that like they're still able to play this game. Like Tomb Pillager, it's just it's a lost tall strider, but when it dies, it adds a coin into your hand. Now, you know, you can kind of say that when it dies, the earliest it can die is like turn 5, and the coin doesn't matter that much, but you always want a coin, you know, you always want a combo activator as a rogue. So I think I would pick the winner, not because I think these cards are the best in the expansion, but I think that Rogue did not take a step back. And I think they even, not, I mean, I don't think they took a step forward because Undercity Valiant and Buccaneer are ridiculous. So, but I don't think they took a step back, which I think is good enough for me to proclaim them as the winner.
Yeah, I think there's a very real chance they will be on top at the end. But, I mean, I looked at this winner and loser idea as who gains the most ground and who loses the most ground. So I can't really disagree with your assessment on that. I just think we kind of answered slightly different questions.
We did. And it's really tough when you're talking about, especially like top 5 cards. I'm like, what do you mean top 5 cards? And then overall winner and loser. Yeah, like if we were to just saying like overall winners and losers in terms of card quality, I think the priest cards are good, you know, like the priest cards are really good. It's just when you inject it into reality and how the classes actually play out. But I think, you know, some things we definitely agree on. And I think you've sold me more on kind of not only Druid, but the Druid cards today as well. Like Raven Idol, I'm like, yeah, that's it's pretty good. And it also adds this flexibility that the Druids never needed because they were pretty much the most flexible class in the arena. But it's really good. You know, 1 mana, you can always squeeze out that 1 mana. It's, you know, same thing for tracking as well. And if you, just by being able to choose a spell or a minion, like that's that double filter we were talking about as well. So I really like Druids. I'm looking forward to that in the new expansion.
So overall for you guys, like with just looking at the whole set here, do you guys think that Arena was represented well here by the design team, or like a little bit more than the past expansions? Or do you think it's about the same, like percentage-wise?
I think Arena was represented more than Constructed, actually.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah.
I think there are no cards in Constructed where you look at this card like, I'm putting that in my deck. It's like I'm maybe trying to make a deck around this card. You know, there's always that wild factor.
Entomb's pretty good, man, right? I mean,
it's not a. I mean, okay. I mean,
Constructed? You're talking about Constructed? No,
yeah, it's great versus Control Warrior, but first there has to be a lot of Control Warriors.
Yeah, still, it's okay, sure.
Yeah, and look, this is my perspective from someone who never plays Constructed. I never thought, you know, even in Constructed, priests had a problem with removal, right? I thought the problem with priests in Constructed was they were too reactive of a class, you know. So for other other decks like that also required setups, like they could just set up on the priest, and the priest kind of had to really just respond, and that's super dangerous against a lot of classes.
Yeah. It just seems like. It's much easier to balance Arena, so I think they just at least had that at the back of their mind. Like, if the rare cards had a common rarity, almost all of them wouldn't even make any difference, right? Like,
yeah, that's probably
in terms of rarity, the cards are really well balanced, and that's an aspect that almost has no drawback to balance. It just seems like they took Arena into account for this expansion, and that actually balances it more than Constructed. I think that's Arena needs so little for it to work.
Well, you could also tell that they thought about the Arena just from the Warrior cards, right? These are 2 premium Arena cards that will never see the light of day. Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know Constructed, but I don't think they're going to make it into Constructed decks.
For sure, they won't make it into Constructed.
I think the
monkey and the bolster thing might be kind of interesting. But
yeah, because it's basically, like you don't see Senjin in constructed really, but this is like a better, you're just missing one stat point from Senjin, and it's a pretty good card. But you could tell that they tried to think about the arena based on rarity, like Kripp talked about, and making these bad classes, especially the worst class right now, and giving them a couple of good tools, one for early game, one for late game. So I think that's really good. I'm really excited about this. And there's fun legendaries here as well, but once again, this is
Just don't
arena.
matter.
Yeah,
Yeah. Warriors need love too, right? That's the movement's actually working.
yeah. And then also there will be those moments where we all like I'm not familiar with the new cards, and I'm going to play into that like Paladin secret that basically it's like the the delayed MC tech that just kills off one of your opponent, like one of your minions, and yeah, I look forward to all of this. But I think it's basically just good to move on. Not saying I'm tired of TGT, but like so Kripp, like what have you thought about the TGT meta as a whole?
I feel like they introduced so many cards on the same power level that like almost all the decks are about the same. So if you're not playing an extravagant tempo deck, a lot of your results are up to RNG effects.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was like a pretty healthy meta though. Like not in terms, we can always complain about the number of paladins, right? Like the number of paladins or like the kind of power difference between the top classes and the haves and the have-nots. But I thought it was really good. It wasn't like in GVG where I think you miss that one mana on one turn and you're absolutely dead. I think there was like some good variety as well, and it was just I think TGT like really brought in a lot of fun and a lot of strategy, and it slowed down the game a little bit, and it introduced kind of it purposefully slowed the game down by dropping these kind of big cards, but good cards like Cavaldi or Raider, and then it also slowed the game down by incentivizing you to use these inspire mechanics. So you didn't feel the need to kind of, and it made it harder for you to create these like rush down aggro decks. So everyone was just trying to like see who curved out better and then just won. So I thought the meta was really healthy, and I like the direction that this expansion is taking it, where you have some interesting cards, interesting mechanics. I don't think any class kind of like pulled away, and then now we just get to see how these cards like mesh with the old cards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Should be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're going to balance the occurrence of the cards. That's really the big thing. I really think there's a real chance that it's going to be something other than 25%. I think there's a good chance it'll be as high as like 50 or even higher.
Wow.
And I think that might be like really exciting, because if it is like 50, you look at the cards and it just seems like everything's in perfect balance. Like Warriors aren't even the worst class if it's like 50. I'm going to go on the record with that.
Wow.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
like Shaman is below Warrior if they do like 50% bonus
Yeah.
for expansion cards.
I have to say, I think Shaman right now, for me, I think Shaman is the second worst class. So I totally understand what you're saying. Shaman's just, and we can talk about that because I think it's going to be an issue really soon. Shaman's, it's obviously a problem in constructed, and it saw some play during the World Championships. But like you said, the tournament scene is nothing like the ladder scene. Yeah, I think Shamans are just big. Every single expansion that's come out, it hasn't given them any consistency. So in the arena, you have RNG with your cards, you have RNG with the draft. Like if you look at a draft, the difference between a deck with a Flame Tongue Totem versus a deck without a Flame Tongue Totem is huge. And that's just, one of the cards. You do 3 damage on a Crackle, you lose the game right there. And you do 7 damage when you just like don't need that damage as well. So you have the RNG in the draft, you have RNG in your cards. Overload is just in the end, Arena is about board control and board initiative, but that comes from tempo. So if you can't tempo because Overload is a little bit too expensive, then you're going to lose. So just all these problems. And who knows, maybe in a few months we'll be saying, they got to fix Shaman. Arena Shaman's better.
They got a long way to sink, but maybe.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna take a quick break. Kripp's gotta go here, so any shout outs, Kripp? Thanks for coming on the show, of course. I always love having you on these arena episodes. But yeah, any last words?
Nope. It was a lot of fun. Finally have a talk with Merps, talk some arena. Learned a few things. I think the biggest thing you swayed me on was the Paladin card. And, hopefully the education was a little bit mutual. But,
it went both ways, dude.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yep.
And see you guys next time.
All right. See you, Kripp.
See you, Kripp. All right, guys, we're going to go to a quick break. And just a reminder, guys, we have a Patreon set up for Value Town. It's the best way to support the show, patreon.com/ValueTown. And we'll be right back, guys.